The Times Vereth Times was dying. Captain Velthar knew this, as he stared at the cracked view screen in front of him. The ship's lights flickered, casting strange shadows across the bridge. His 6 legs ached from standing for so long, but there was nowhere else to go. The rest of the ship was even colder than here. 3 weeks had passed since the collision. A piece of dead satellite, spinning through the dark, had torn through their hull like paper. The engines died first. Then the communication array shattered. Then, slowly, the life support began to fail. Velthar's crew had been 47 when they left the mining colony. Now, only 12 remained. The others had suffocated when sections of the ship lost air. Some had frozen when the heating failed. Velthar had ordered the survivors to gather in the cargo bay, where they huddled together for warmth. The distress beacon still worked. It was the only thing that did. For 3 weeks, it had called out into the void, screaming for help in every known language. And ships had come. Velthar had watched them on the sensors, his hope rising each time. The first ship was Draxian. It came close, scanned them, and left. The second was from the Merchant Guild. Same thing. Scan and leave. Then, a Confederation patrol ship. Then, a colony transport. Then 3 more. All of them saw the Times Vereth asterisk. All of them scanned the damage. All of them calculated the risk and the cost. And all of them flew away. Velthar understood why. The regulations were clear. The Times Vereth Times was in a debris field. Rescue would be dangerous. The ship was too damaged to tow safely. Moving the crew would require resources and time. And the Kresh were not an important species. They had no powerful allies, no great wealth, no political influence. Saving them made no economic sense. This was how the galaxy worked. This was civilization. Thune entered the bridge, moving slowly. His shell was cracked from an earlier injury, and green blood had dried along the edges. He carried a small container of water, one of their last. "Captain," Thune said quietly, "Rix is asking how much longer." Rix was young, barely old enough to have left the homeworld. He still believed someone would save them. "Tell him soon," Velthar lied. Thune's antennae drooped. He knew the truth. They all did. Except, maybe Rix. "Another ship is coming," Thune said, checking the sensor panel. Small vessel. Unknown signature. Velthar felt nothing. Another ship meant another scan. Another calculation. Another departure. He had stopped hoping after the 5th ship left them. "Let me know when it leaves," Velthar said. But an hour later, Thune returned to the bridge, his antennae standing straight up. "Captain, the ship is still here, and they are trying to communicate." Velthar moved to the communication panel. The words came through, distorted and broken. "In Galactic Common, this is the salvage vessel Times Dewa asterisk. We received your distress call. What is your situation?" Velthar's hands shook as he activated the transmitter. "This is Captain Velthar of the cargo ship Times Vereth asterisk. Our ship is critically damaged. Life support failing. 12 crew remaining. Multiple vessels have scanned us, but provided no assistance." There was a pause. Then a different voice came through, female and calm. "Captain Velthar, this is Captain Nari of the Times Dewa asterisk. We are going to help you. Can you tell us about your injuries and ship integrity?" Velthar stared at the speaker. Help? No one helped. Not in situations like this. This had to be some kind of mistake or misunderstanding. "You do not understand," Velthar said carefully. "We are in a debris field. The ship cannot be moved safely. We have insufficient suits for evacuation. The rescue cost would be considerable. There is no profit in this action." Another pause. Then the voice called. Nari spoke again, and Velthar heard something in her tone he had not heard in weeks. Kindness. "We understand perfectly, Captain. We are not leaving you. Now please, tell us about your crew's condition so we can prepare." In the cargo bay below, Rix heard the news and began to cry, his shell vibrating with relief. The other creche held each other, afraid to believe it. Kessa, the ship's engineer, listened to the human voices on the comm and felt confused. Nothing in her understanding of galactic civilization explained this. On board the Times Dewa *, Captain Nari stood on her bridge, studying the damaged alien ship on her screen. Her crew was quiet, waiting for orders. "It will be dangerous," said Dongwu from the pilot station. "The regulations say we do not have to rescue them," added Songmin. "This is legally their problem, not ours." Nari looked at her crew. They were good people. She knew what they would choose, even if they were voicing the concerns they should voice. "Hyun," Nari said, turning to her engineer. "Can we get them out?" Hyun was already working on his datapad, running calculations. He was a thin man with tired eyes, but those eyes were sharp now, focused. "We cannot tow it safely, but we could do an EVA transfer. Suit them up. Bring them across. On tethers." "In that debris field?" Sangmin asked. "It is very dangerous," Hyun admitted. "But possible." Nari looked back at the screen. 12 people were dying in that ship. 12 lives. 12 individuals with families and dreams and fears. The math was simple to her. "Prepare for EVA rescue operations," Nari ordered. Bo-Ra. "Maintain constant communication with the Times." Verath *. Taeyang. "Set up emergency medical in the cargo bay." Hyun, "Get the suits ready." Dongwu, "Get us as close as you safely can." Her crew moved immediately, without hesitation. They knew their captain. They knew what kind of people they were. Nari opened the channel to the Times Verath Times again. "Captain Velthar, we are preparing to transfer your crew to our ship. It will be difficult, but we will get everyone out. You have my word." On the Times Verath *, Velthar sat down slowly, his legs no longer able to hold him. In 40 years of space travel, he had never heard words like these. Around him, his crew began to weep. For the first time in 3 weeks, Velthar allowed himself to hope. The Times, Dewa Times, moved slowly through the debris field, like a careful animal walking through broken glass. On the bridge, Dongwu's hands moved across the controls with practiced precision. Every few seconds, another piece of metal or rock would drift past, some as small as pebbles, others as large as vehicles. "Debris at Mark 7, called out Bo-Ra from her station. Adjusting course. Nari watched the Times Verath Times grow larger on the screen. Up close, the damage was worse than she had thought. The hull was torn open in 3 places. Frozen atmosphere crystals surrounded the ship like a cloud. It was a miracle anyone had survived this long. "Captain," Bo-Ra said, "I am receiving a message from the Times Verath *. Captain Velthar wants to speak with you privately." Nari moved to the communication station and put on the headset. "This is Nari." Velthar's voice came through, hesitant and confused. "Captain Nari, I must ask you something. My people have heard stories about humans. They say you are new to galactic space. They say you are unpredictable and emotional. Some say dangerous." Nari almost smiled. "Why are you doing this? You gain nothing. You risk your ship and crew. We cannot repay you. This makes no sense by any civilized standard. So I must know. What do you want from us?" Nari was quiet for a moment, thinking about how to answer. Finally, she said simply, "We want you to live. That is all." "But why?" Velthar's voice cracked. "You do not know us. We are not your species. We have no alliance with your people. Does that matter?" Nari asked. The line was silent for a long time. Then, Velthar spoke again, very quietly. "To everyone else. Yes, it mattered to everyone else." "Well," Nari said gently, "we are not everyone else." In the cargo bay of the Times, Dewa asterisk, Taeyang was setting up the medical area. He was a broad-shouldered man with gentle hands. And he worked quickly, laying out equipment and supplies. He did not know what creche biology was like, so he prepared for everything. Hyun arrived with an armful of EVA suits. "These are going to be too big for them," he said, looking at the suits designed for humans. "The creche have 6 limbs and different body structure. Can you modify them?" Taeyang asked. "Not properly. Not in time." Hyun sat down and started thinking. "But I can make them work. They will not be comfortable, but they will keep them alive long enough to cross over." Sang-min entered the cargo bay, already wearing his EVA suit. "I am ready to go across." "Who else?" "Me," Hyun said immediately. "You are the engineer," Sang-min pointed out. "If something happens to you, we lose our best chance of getting everyone back safely." "Exactly," Hyun said, sealing up one of the modified suits. "Which is why I need to be there. I know these suits better than anyone. If something goes wrong, I can fix it." Sang-min looked like he wanted to argue, but he knew Hyun was right. On the Times Verath asterisk, the creche crew gathered in the cargo bay, watching as the human ship drew closer. Young Rix pressed against the viewport, his eyes wide. He had never seen a human before. "What do they look like?" Rix asked. Kessa, the engineer, accessed her datapad. "Bipedal. 2 arms, 2 legs, soft skin, no shell. They are very fragile compared to us. Their homeworld has lighter gravity, so they are weaker." "Then how will they carry us?" Rix asked. Kessa did not have an answer for that. Thune stood nearby, his antennae twitching with nervousness. "I have heard that humans are very emotional. They make decisions based on feelings rather than logic. This is considered a weakness by most species." "Then why are they here when no one else came?" Rix asked. Thune had no answer for that either. The radio crackled to life. It was Bora's voice. "Captain Velthar, we are in position. We are going to send 2 crew members to your ship with EVA suits for your people. The crossing will be difficult, but we will guide everyone across safely. We will take the injured first." Velthar looked at his crew. Some were scared. Some were hopeful. All of them were exhausted. "We understand. We are ready." The airlock on the Times Verath Times had barely enough power to cycle. Velthar and Kessa waited as the pressure equalized. And then, the door opened. 2 figures floated in from the darkness, connected to the Times Dewa Times by glowing tether lines. The humans were smaller than Velthar had expected. Their EVA suits were bulky and white, with clear helmets showing their faces. Velthar saw one was male, one female, both with dark hair and careful eyes. The male human's voice came through the radio. "I am Hyun. This is Sang-min. We have suits for you. They are not perfect, but they will work." Hyun moved with surprising grace in zero gravity, pulling a bag of modified suits with him. He began showing Kessa how they worked, his movements patient and clear. Sang-min floated to Thune, who was helping support an injured crew member. "This one is hurt," Thune said, indicating the cracks in the crew member's shell. Sang-min examined the injury carefully. "We will take him first. Our medical officer is ready." It took time to get everyone suited up. The modified suits were awkward, and the creche had trouble with the human design. But Hyun worked with each one, adjusting and securing, checking and double-checking. He spoke to them calmly, even though they could not understand his language without the translator. And his presence was steady. Finally, they were ready. Sang-min attached a tether to the first injured creche. "Hold tight," he said. "Do not let go. We will pull you across." The creche crew member gripped the tether with 4 of his hands. Sang-min activated the winch system on his suit, and slowly, carefully, the injured alien began to float across the gap between the ships. From the Times Dewa asterisk, Dongwoo watched with intense focus. A piece of debris was drifting toward the crossing path. Debris! Incoming! He announced. 8 seconds to intercept. Nari saw it too. If it hit the tether or the crew member, they could be killed or sent spinning into the void. Dongwu. Can you adjust our position? Not fast enough, Dongwu said, his hands already moving. Nari understood what he meant. Do it. The Dewa Times fired its maneuvering thrusters, moving the entire ship directly into the path of the debris. The metal fragment struck the hull with a dull clang that echoed through the ship. Red warning lights flashed, indicating minor hull damage. But the Kresh crew member passed by safely, reaching the airlock. In the Times Veroth asterisk, Rix watched in amazement. They damaged their own ship to protect him. Why would they do that? Velthar watched the human ship, seeing the scorch mark where the debris had hit. These strange beings were risking everything for people they had never met. It went against everything he understood about how the galaxy worked. I do not know, Velthar said quietly. But I think we are about to learn what it means to meet humanity. One by one, the Kresh crossed the void, guided by the steady hands of Hyun and Sangmin, and one by one, they entered the Times Dewa asterisk, where Taeyang waited with warmth and medicine, and the kind of stubborn hope that refused to let anyone die on his watch. Taeyang had been a doctor for 12 years, but he had never treated a Kresh before. As the first injured alien came through the airlock, carried by Sangmin, Taeyang felt a moment of doubt. The creature was unlike anything in his medical training. 6 limbs, a hard shell, green blood, and organs he could not identify. Then his training took over. Injured was injured. Pain was pain. Life was life. Put him here, Taeyang directed, pointing to the medical bed he had prepared. The Kresh was barely conscious, his breathing shallow. The cracks in his shell were leaking green fluid. Taeyang scanned the alien with his medical sensors. The readings made little sense, but he could see the basics. Internal pressure loss. Fluid in the wrong places. Temperature too low. He began to work, his hands steady. Bora stood nearby, accessing the Galactic Medical Database on her datapad. It says Kresh biology requires specialized treatment. We should wait for a properly equipped facility. How long until we reach one? Taeyang asked. 14 hours. Taeyang looked at the dying alien in front of him. He does not have 14 hours. I work with what I have. Now. He began sealing the shell cracks with medical foam. Something designed for human wounds but adaptable. It was not perfect, but it would hold. Then he carefully inserted a fluid line, providing hydration and basic nutrients. The Kresh's breathing improved slightly. On the Times Verath asterisk, Hyun was preparing the last group for transfer. Only 5 remained, including Captain Velthar and young Rix. But they had a problem. The tether system is wearing out, Hyun said into his radio. The last crossing damaged the cable. I am not sure it will hold for 5 more. Nari's voice came back immediately. What do you need? More time to repair it. Or a second cable. We do not have a second cable, Nari said. And we do not have much time. The debris field is getting more active. How long to repair? Nari. Hyun examined the damaged section. The cable was frayed and weak. I can reinforce it. But it will only be strong enough for one person at a time. And even then, it might break. Do it, Nari ordered. Hyun went to work with the tools on his suit, wrapping and fusing the damaged section as best he could. His hands worked quickly, but carefully. One mistake, and the cable would snap. Inside the Times Dewa asterisk, Kessa watched through a viewport as more of her crew arrived. Each one looked exhausted and scared, but alive. Taeyang moved between them, checking vitals, providing treatment, offering words of comfort, even though many could not understand his language. His tone said everything. Kessa's translator had been working on decoding more human speech. She listened to the crew talking as they worked. What she heard confused her. The hull damage is not serious, but it will cost money to repair, one human said. Worth it, another replied simply. The medical supplies we are using are expensive. This rescue is going to run us into debt. Still worth it. Kessa did not understand. How could this be worth it? The humans gained nothing. They lost resources, risked their lives, damaged their ship. By any logical calculation, this was a terrible decision. Yet, they spoke as if it was obvious, as if there was no other choice. Back on the Times Varath *, Hyun finished his repair. Cable is ready. But we need to go one at a time, and slowly. Velthar looked at his remaining crew. You, Captain, Thune said immediately. You are too important. No, Velthar said firmly. Rix goes first. He is the youngest. Rix started to protest, but Velthar cut him off. That is an order. Hyun attached the tether to Rix and activated the winch. The young Kresh began to float across, his 6 hands gripping the cable tightly. Halfway across, the cable made a sharp, pinging sound. It was starting to fail. Faster, Nari ordered. The winch pulled harder. Rix moved faster through the void. Another ping. Then another. The cable was unraveling. On the bridge, Dongwu saw a problem. Debris cluster incoming. Big one. 20 seconds. Nari saw it too. A cloud of metal fragments. All spinning and tumbling. Directly in Rix's path. If they hit him, he would die. If they hit the cable, he would drift away forever. We cannot dodge it in time, Dongwu said, his voice tight. Not with Rix on the line. Nari made her decision in an instant. Shield him. Full coverage. Dongwu's fingers flew across the controls. The Times Daehwa Times moved, positioning itself between Rix and the debris cloud. The fragments hit the hull like bullets, dozens of impacts that sent shudders through the ship. But Rix reached the airlock safely. Hull breaches on decks 2 and 3, Bora reported. Sealing emergency bulkheads. Nari nodded. Continue the rescue. One by one, the remaining Kresh crossed. Thune. Then 2 others. Each crossing took longer as the cable weakened further. Finally, only Velthar and Hyun remained on the Times. Varath *. You go, Hyun said to Velthar. You cannot operate the winch from here, Velthar pointed out. How will you cross? 1. Hyun smiled inside his helmet. I will figure something out. That is what engineers do. Velthar attached himself to the cable, and Hyun activated the winch one last time. The Kresh captain began to move across, but halfway there, the cable snapped with a sharp crack. Velthar began to drift, untethered, into the void. On the bridge, Sangmin was already moving. I am going after him. Wait, Nari said. But Sangmin was already in the airlock. Sangmin launched himself from the airlock without a tether, using only his suit thrusters to navigate. It was incredibly dangerous. One miscalculation, and he would drift away forever, just like Velthar. But Sangmin had trained for this. His hands worked the thruster controls with perfect precision. He caught up to Velthar, grabbing the alien with both arms. Then he fired his thrusters in a long, controlled burn, pushing them both back toward the Times Daehwa *. The fuel gauge on his suit dropped rapidly. He was using too much. Too fast. You are going to run out of fuel, Bora said over the radio, watching his readings. I know, Sangmin replied calmly. He ran out of fuel 15 meters from the ship. They were still moving, but slowly, their momentum carrying them forward. It would take several minutes to drift close enough to the airlock. Minutes they did not have, as more debris was approaching. From the Times Varath *, Hyun watched. Then he activated his own thrusters and launched himself toward them, carrying the backup cable. He reached Sangmin and Velthar, attached the cable to both of them, and fired his thrusters to push them faster toward the Times Daehwa *. Now, all 3 were running out of fuel. Dongwu brought the Daewoo Times as close as he dared, using the ship itself to reach out to them. The airlock outer door opened, and Taeyang was there in an EVA suit, reaching out with a rescue pole. He caught Velthar first, pulling him in, then Sangmin, then Hyun, who was now completely out of fuel. The airlock sealed. The Daewoo Times, moved away from the Verath asterisk, leaving the dead ship behind. In the cargo bay, all 12 Kresh survivors were gathered. They were cold, hurt, exhausted, and traumatized. But they were alive. Taeyang had worked for 16 hours straight, treating injuries, stabilizing vital signs, improvising solutions for alien biology he barely understood. 3 of the Kresh had been close to death. The medical database said they could not be saved with available equipment. Taeyang had saved them anyway. Velthar found Nari on the bridge later. The human captain looked tired. Her ship was damaged, and her crew was exhausted. The rescue had cost them greatly. Why? Velthar asked again. Your ship is hurt. You spent resources you cannot replace. We cannot repay you. In every logical way, this was a bad decision. So why? Nari looked at the Kresh captain for a long moment. Then she said simply, because you needed help. What else would we do? Leave you there to die? Velthar realized then that this was not a question Nari was asking him. For her, and for her crew, it was the obvious answer. The only answer. For the first time, Velthar understood that humans were not illogical or overly emotional. They simply had a different equation for value. Life was not part of the calculation. Life was the reason for all calculations. Thank you, Velthar said quietly. Nari smiled. Get some rest, Captain. You are safe now. The Daewoo Times limped toward Station Kepler 7, its hull scarred and dented from the rescue. In the cargo bay, the Kresh survivors rested in makeshift beds, while Taeyang continued to monitor their health. None had died. Against all odds, against medical probability, none had died. Haewon moved through the cargo bay with her camera, documenting everything. She was a journalist, assigned to travel with the Daewoo Times for a story about salvage operations. She had expected to write about cargo recovery and ship repair. Instead, she had witnessed something she could barely believe. May I speak with you? Haewon asked Velthar, who was resting near a heating unit. The Kresh captain's antennae twitched. Yes. Haewon activated her recorder. Can you tell me what happened? From the beginning? Velthar spoke slowly, describing the collision, the failing life support, the distress beacon. Then he described the ships that came and scanned them and left. His voice was steady, but Haewon could hear the pain underneath. 9 ships passed us, Velthar said. 9 different species. All of them saw us dying. All of them calculated that we were not worth saving. This is normal. This is how civilization works. I understood this. But then the humans came, Haewon prompted. Yes. Then the humans came. Velthar looked around the cargo bay, at the human crew working to care for his people. They did not calculate. They did not consider profit, or cost, or risk. They simply helped. I asked them why. Many times. Their answer was always the same. Because we needed help. As if that was enough reason. As if that was the only reason that mattered. All. Where? Oh. Haewon interviewed the other Kresh as well. Young Rix, who cried as he described watching Sang-min catch his captain in open space. Thun, who showed her his shell injury and explained how Taeyang had treated it with materials designed for humans. Kessa, who spoke about watching the Daewoo Times deliberately take damage to protect them. I am an engineer, Kessa said. I understand systems and calculations. What the humans did makes no sense. They sacrificed their own ship for strangers. They risked their lives for people they will never see again. By every measure of galactic civilization, they are fools. But you are alive, Haywan said. Yes, Kessa replied quietly. We are alive, because they are fools. Haywan sent her story to the Galactic News Network before the Dewa Times reached the station. She included video, interviews, and the sensor logs showing the 9 ships that had abandoned the creche. She titled it, Left to Perish in Space. Then, a human ship broke through the silence. The story reached the network 6 hours before the Dewa Times docked. By the time Nari brought her ship into port, the entire station knew what had happened. 3 of the 9 ships that had passed the Verath Times were docked at Kepler 7. Their captains suddenly found themselves facing questions they did not want to answer. Why did you leave them? Why did the humans save them when you did not? What does this say about your species? The captains had answers, of course. Good answers. Legal answers. The rescue was too dangerous. The regulations did not require it. The cost was too high. These were all true statements. But standing next to the truth of 12 living creche, those answers sounded hollow. Ambassador Vren of the Galactic Consortium contacted the Dewa Times, directly. He was a tall reptilian, with cold eyes and a voice that expected obedience. His image appeared on the bridge view screen. Captain Nari, Vren said, his tone sharp. You have caused quite a disturbance. There are protocols for rescue operations in hazardous zones. You violated several of them. Nari stood calmly before the screen. Which protocols specifically? Nari. You entered a quarantine debris field without proper authorization. You risked your ship and crew without filing appropriate risk assessments. You used equipment in ways not approved by manufacturer guidelines. 1. Yujin stepped forward. She was the human diplomat assigned to this sector. A small woman with iron in her voice. Ambassador Vren, please cite the specific regulations that Captain Nari violated. Vren's eyes narrowed. The risk assessment requirements under Section are guidelines, not laws, Yujin interrupted smoothly. And they apply to commercial operations, not emergency rescue. Captain Nari was responding to a distress call. Under the Treaty of Civilized Space, any vessel capable of rendering aid is encouraged to do so. Encouraged, not required. Vren countered. Correct. Yujin agreed. Which means Captain Nari broke no laws. She simply did what others chose not to do. The conversation was being broadcast throughout the station. Thousands watched as the human diplomat calmly dismantled the ambassador's arguments. Vren changed tactics. The humans are inexperienced in galactic matters. They do not understand the complexities of resource management and risk calculation. Their emotional response to this situation, while admirable in its sentiment, is not sustainable or practical. 12 people are alive, Yujin said simply. How is that not practical? Vren had no response to that. In the station's main plaza, the creche survivors appeared publicly for the first time. Velthar stood at a podium, his shell still bearing the cracks from his ordeal. Beside him stood Nari and her crew. Thousands gathered to watch, both in person and via broadcast. Hundreds of species, thousands of worlds, all watching this moment. I am alive because of humans, Velthar said, his voice transmitted across the galaxy. My crew is alive because of humans. We were abandoned by 9 ships from 9 species, all following proper procedures and protocols. We accepted our death as inevitable. Then the humans arrived. And they did not follow procedures. They followed something else. Conscience. Compassion. Courage. He paused, looking at the crowd. The humans damaged their ship to protect us. They risked their lives to save strangers. They spent resources they could not afford. And when I asked them why, they seemed confused by the question, as if helping was the obvious choice, as if there was no choice at all. Velthar turned to Nari. On behalf of the creche people, I formally request an alliance with humanity. Not because of your technology, which is less advanced than ours. Not because of your military, which is smaller than most. But because you represent something the galaxy has forgotten. The value of life itself. The crowd erupted. Some species cheered. Others protested. Arguments broke out across the plaza. But something had changed. A seed had been planted. Over the following days, more stories emerged. A human medical ship that had treated refugees no other species would help. A human colony that had sheltered survivors from a destroyed station. A human explorer who had risked everything to evacuate families from a failing habitat. The pattern was undeniable. Wherever humans went, they helped. Not because it was profitable, not because it was required, but because someone needed help, and they were there. In the Galactic Consortium, debates erupted. Some species began quietly changing their rescue protocols, embarrassed by the comparison to humans. Others doubled down, insisting that emotion-based decision-making was dangerous and unsustainable. But in the dark corners of space, on failing ships and dying stations, a new call went out. Is anyone there? Please. Is there a human ship nearby? Because the galaxy had learned something new, humans would answer. Always. 47 species sent representatives to meet with human ambassadors, not for trade agreements or military pacts, but to understand. To learn what drove these strange beings to risk everything for strangers. And on station Kepler 7, Velthar stood at the viewport, watching the HFY Times prepare to depart. The ship was still damaged, the repairs only partially complete, but another distress call had come in, from a mining colony in trouble. Nari had not hesitated. Kessa approached Velthar. I have been analyzing human culture, she said, trying to understand their motivation. I found something in their history, a phrase they use. No one left behind. What does it mean? Velthar asked. It means exactly what it says. No matter how difficult, no matter the cost, they do not abandon their own. Kessa's antennae twitched. But here is what I find remarkable. They apply this rule to everyone. Not just humans. Everyone. Velthar watched the HFY Times pull away from the station. The galaxy is about to change, he said quietly. Yes, Kessa agreed. Because of them. 6 months had passed since the rescue of the Times Verith*. The galaxy had not stopped talking about it. Admiral Somi stood in the briefing room of the human diplomatic station, looking at the holographic display before her. 14 incidents. 14 times that human ships had rescued people that others had abandoned. 14 times that humanity had proven the same point. The Galactic Council has requested a meeting, Yujin reported. They want to discuss our rescue operations. Somi was a stern woman with gray in her hair and steel in her spine. She had served in space for 30 years and had seen humanity grow from a single world to a small but growing presence among the stars. What is their concern? Well, officially, they want to establish new safety protocols based on our methods, Yujin said. Unofficially, we are making them uncomfortable. Several species have experienced internal pressure to change their policies. Some are embracing it. Others resent us for it. We saved lives, Somi said simply. If that makes them uncomfortable, that is their problem. But she agreed to attend the council meeting, bringing Nari and her crew as representatives of human rescue operations. The Council of 12 met in a massive chamber that floated in neutral space, a station that belonged to no one species. Representatives from the 12 most powerful civilizations sat in a circle, with the gallery filled by observers from hundreds of other worlds. Nari felt small in this room. Her ship was a tiny salvage vessel. She was a simple captain. And yet, here she stood, facing the most powerful beings in the galaxy. The council chair, a being of pure energy contained in a crystalline form, spoke first. Captain Nari, your actions have sparked significant debate across galactic civilization. We wish to understand your motivations and methods. Nari stood calmly, Velthar beside her. The creche captain had insisted on coming. Along with representatives from the other species humanity had rescued. What would you like to know? Nari asked. A Draxian counselor, massive and covered in armor-like scales, leaned forward. You have rescued 14 ships in 6 months. Ships that were deemed too dangerous or too costly to save by established protocols. This seems reckless. 14 ships. Nari repeated. 378 lives. How is saving lives reckless? Because you risk your own people to do it, the Draxian replied. You damage your ships. You expend resources. For what gain? Nari looked at Velthar, then back at the council. The gain is that 378 people are alive who would otherwise be dead. Is that not enough? A Merchant Guild representative spoke up, his voice oily and calculated. But at what cost? Your rescue operations run at a significant loss. This is not sustainable. C1. We sustain it anyway, Nari said. For how long? The merchant pressed. Resources are finite. Eventually, you will not be able to continue. Hyun stepped forward from behind Nari. We will find ways to sustain it. We will adapt. We will make do. But we will not stop. The council chamber was silent. The concept was alien to most of them. Sustainability was supposed to dictate action. Cost-benefit analysis was supposed to guide decisions. Yet here were humans, openly stating they would ignore these basic principles. Ambassador Vren rose to speak. He had been quiet since the incident at Station Kepler 7, his reputation damaged by comparison to human actions. The humans are idealistic. But idealism does not survive the reality of space. Eventually, they will learn that hard choices must be made, that not everyone can be saved. Nari met his eyes. You are right. Not everyone can be saved. But that does not mean we should not try to save everyone we can. The difference being? Vren challenged. The difference, Nari said quietly, is that we do not decide who deserves to be saved based on calculations. We try to save everyone. And if we fail trying. We do not fail by choosing not to try. A murmur ran through the council chamber. Some species nodded. Others looked uncomfortable. The council chair spoke again. The council acknowledges that human rescue methods have been effective. We propose incorporating some of your techniques into standard protocols. However, we must balance risk management with rescue operations. Nari shook her head. You cannot balance life against risk. Life is the priority. Everything else is secondary. That is an emotional perspective, said a reptilian counselor. Not a logical one. Is it illogical to value life? Nari asked. Then perhaps logic needs to be reconsidered. Before the debate could continue, Velthar stepped forward. May I speak? The council chair gestured permission. 6 months ago, I sat on my dying ship, watching species after species scan us and leave. I understood why. I am an educated being. I know about resources and risk and cost-benefit analysis. By every measure of civilized thought, leaving us was the correct decision. Velthar paused. But then the humans came. And they showed me that civilization is not measured by our calculations. It is measured by our choices when calculations say to abandon others. He looked around the chamber. Since the humans rescued us, 47 species have approached the creche, not with pity, not with charity, but with respect and alliance. They recognize that the humans have changed something fundamental. They want to be part of that change. Velthar turned to face the council directly. You ask if human methods are sustainable. I say this. Humans have existed in galactic space for less than 1 generation. In that time, they have rescued hundreds of lives, changed the policies of dozens of worlds, and proven that another way is possible. How is this not sustainable? They are growing stronger, not weaker. They are gaining allies, not enemies. The question is not whether humans can sustain their approach. The question is whether the rest of us can afford to ignore their example. The chamber erupted in discussion. Some counselors argued passionately for change. Others defended the established system. But no one could deny the simple truth. Humanity had proven something the galaxy had forgotten. That compassion could be strength. That doing the right thing could be its own reward. The meeting lasted for hours. In the end, the council voted to establish new rescue protocols based partially on human methods. It was a compromise. Not perfect, but it was progress. More importantly, 38 species formally requested closer ties with humanity. Later, on the observation deck, Nari stood with her crew, watching the stars. Velthar approached, moving more easily, now that his shell had fully healed. "What happens now?" Velthar asked. "We go back to work," Nari said simply. "You have changed the galaxy," Velthar said. "Do you understand that?" Nari smiled. "We just did what needed to be done." "No," Velthar said firmly. "You did what everyone should do, but most will not. That is the difference." An alert chimed on Nari's communicator. Bora's voice came through. "Captain, we are receiving a distress call. Mining hauler in the outer reach. Engine failure. Life support critical. 27 crew." Nari did not hesitate. "Plot a course. Full speed. Tell them we are coming. The outer reach is 4 days away," Bora said. "I do not care," Nari said. "Someone needs help. We answer." As the Dewa times prepared to depart, Velthar watched the human crew work with practiced efficiency. Hyun was already calculating fuel needs and repair schedules. Taeyang was preparing medical supplies. Dongwoo was planning the fastest route. Sangmin was checking emergency equipment. They moved like a machine, but they were motivated by something no machine possessed. "Your people have a saying," Velthar said to Nari. "I learned it from Kessa. No one left behind." Velthar. "I learned it." Velthar. "Sukwai." Velthar. Nari nodded. "It is more than a saying. It is a promise. Even though you cannot save everyone." "We cannot save everyone," Nari agreed. "But we can try. And every life we save makes the trying worthwhile." The Dewa times pulled away from the station, its engines glowing as it accelerated toward the outer reach, toward people in trouble, toward another impossible rescue. Velthar remained on the observation deck, watching the human ship disappear into the dark. Around him, other beings gathered, watching the same sight. They came from dozens of species, hundreds of worlds, and they were all thinking the same thing. The galaxy had spent thousands of years perfecting the calculations of civilization. Efficiency, profit, risk management, sustainability. These were the pillars of galactic society. But humanity had introduced a new variable into the equation. One that could not be measured, or calculated, or contained in protocols. Compassion. And it was proving to be the most powerful force in the galaxy. In the council chamber, debates continued about rescue protocols and resource management. But in the dark spaces between stars, where ships failed and people died, a new truth was taking hold. If you were in trouble, you called for help. And if a human ship heard you, they would come, no matter the cost, no matter the risk, no matter what calculations said, they would come. Because that was what humans did. And slowly, one species at a time, one rescue at a time, the galaxy was learning to do the same. Not because regulations required it, not because profit dictated it, but because it was right. 300 light-years away, the mining hauler drifted in space, its crew huddled together in the cold. They had sent their distress call, not expecting an answer. No one came to the outer reach. It was too far, too dangerous, too expensive. But then the sensors picked up a signal. A ship was coming. Fast. "It is a human ship," the hauler's captain announced, his voice breaking with emotion. The Times Dewa, asterisk. They say they will reach us in 3 days. The crew began to cry with relief. Because they knew what everyone in the galaxy now knew. Humans did not abandon people. Ever. And in that simple truth, the galaxy found hope